I'm Pasan Herath, and I'm a postdoc at Ottawa. And I have been working with my supervisor Pascal, Omar, and Bill, and Hazen on doing a time series analysis of the sediment cores that were extracted from Eastern Ottawa. So those are the same cores that Mark mentioned in the previous presentation. And this is this is sort of the same map that Mark showed in his presentation, and we have two boreholes in Eastern Ottawa, BC2 and BC16, and they all contain sediments from the Champlain Sea. And if you look at the figure on the left-hand side here, it shows one of the borehole CT scan images. And we can clearly see that there's some repeating pattern of sedimentation when you go down the borehole. And this is from Unit 1 that Mark mentioned, that occurs at the base of BC16 borehole. And I'll come on to the other two figures and what they show later. And again, going back to the two boreholes, we have 4 units that are stratigraphically distinct. And we have Unit 1 at the bottom, and going upwards, we go to Unit 2, Unit 3, Unit 4A, and Unit 4B. And the figure on the left, the middle here, it shows the variation of what's called Hounsfield units, which is a measure of the bulk density of the material. So you can see that clearly that there are some cyclical variations in these Hounsfield units going down the borehole. And this one of these cycles is proposed to represent waxing and one waxing and waning cycle that occurs within 1 year of deposition. And we tried to exploit this factor to obtain a relative time series of these HU profiles or Hounsfield unit profiles, and to do power spectral analysis to identify if there are any repeating or periodic patterns in the thicknesses of these the beds, which you call bed thicknesses, or the HU values, which may also represent the thicknesses of the units. So as you can what you see in these slides, the two Hounsfield unit profiles for the two boreholes, BC2 on the left and BC16 on the right. And in the bottom, we have the complete record for each of these boreholes in one plot. And the figures on the top, they show zoomed up sections of the HU profile split into 4 parts, just to show the cyclical variation in HU values that we see throughout the borehole. And if you look at, particularly if you look at BC16, you can see that there are clear cyclical variations in HU values in Unit 1, which is the same for almost all the other units. And you also can see there are some gaps in these HU profiles. So those are because these gaps exist because there was no core recovered at these depth ranges. And we tried to circumvent this by using geophysical logs, trying to exploit the correlations with geophysical logs and the HU profiles in the sections where we have HU values or CT scan images, but the correlation and the sampling interval between these two complementary methods, CT scan data and geophysical logs, seem to be not that good. So we kind of had to give up on that. And also another important thing, Mark also mentioned about this. So we can see an increasing trend in the HU values as you go down the borehole. And this is likely to be related with the compaction that occurs with depth. Okay, so we're coming into the methodology that we adopted for this study. So what you tried to do was, what you did was a power spectrum analysis or power spectral analysis of the HU values. So in a power spectral analysis, we try to fit sine and cosine functions to a signal. And if you look at the figure here, it shows a signal with that changes with time. And by doing a power spectral analysis, we can decompose this signal into constituent sine or cosine waves with specific frequencies. So these frequencies give us the number of cycles per unit time. And an alternative way of looking at a signal like this. So in this case, we have HU values that change with depth. So instead of using time, we can also use distance in this in a power spectral analysis. So in this case, if you use distance rather than a time, then the power spectral analysis will give us the number of cycles per unit distance, which is also good, which also provides us useful information about the depositional environments, which is that occurred during the past times. So this is again showing the same figure that we saw earlier, and this is, as you can see, this is also a time series that is sampled in both depth and time. And as I mentioned in one of the previous slides, one of these cycles represent 1 year of deposition. Then we can easily transform this signal or this cyclical change from depth domain to time domain. And then we can do a power spectral analysis, a time domain power spectral analysis. And we also can do the depth domain power spectral analysis. So in the very first step, we did a power spectral analysis for periodic bed thicknesses. So what we did here was we picked the peaks and the troughs in the HU profiles. And then we did this manually, and then we considered the distance between two adjacent troughs or minima to be 1 cycle of deposition or 1 year of deposition. And then we did a power spectral analysis for each of the units, going from unit 1 up to unit 4B, based on the same assumption. And we also did a significant testing of any of the peaks that we identify in the periodic or in the power spectral analysis, just to make sure that these peaks are significant from a statistical point of view. So going forward from this slide, I will be showing you some figures of the periodic bed thicknesses we identified for each of the units. So unit 1 was observed in the borehole BC16 only. So the figure on the top, it shows the bed thickness time series that is sampled every year based on the assumption that we use. And the figure on the bottom shows the power spectral density plot. And the power spectral density is the black curve. And we have 3 other curves, a purple one, a green one, and a yellow one. And those show the confidence intervals at 90, 95, and 99%. And the gray areas, those show the bootstrapping samples. So as you can see here, only one of the peaks surpass the 90% confidence interval, and that is at the periodic bed thickness of 3.6 years. And going to the second unit, or unit 2, these are the same plots as before, but here we have the periodic bed thicknesses for BC16 and VC2, because unit 2 was observed in both of the boreholes. So in BC16, we can see a periodic bed thickness occurring every 2.5 years at 90% confident interval. And in VC2, it is around 2 years at 95%. And also there's another peak at 14 years at the 95% confidence interval. Going into unit 3, in BC16, we observe again a periodic bed thickness every 2 years at 99% confidence interval. And in VC2 for Unit 3, we observe 2 peaks that are statistically significant at 95 and 90%. So those are every 2.5 years, and the other one is every 12 to 15 years. And going to Unit 4A, we have again 3 peaks, or 2 peaks, no, 3 peaks, sorry. So in BC16, we have a repeating bed thickness every 3.6 years. And in VC2, we have one at 2.4 years and another one at 6.4 years. And in Unit 4B, we could not pick, we could pick only one bed thickness. So it doesn't allow us to compute any power spectrum for that. So we had to give up with Unit 4B. So a summary of the periodic bed thicknesses and the climate cycles that may relate with the periodic bed thicknesses that you observe. So the table on the left hand shows a summary of the periodic bed thicknesses. Unit 1, every 3.6 years. Unit 2, 2 to 3 years and 14 years. Unit 3, 2 years and 12 to 15 years. And Unit 4A, from 2 to 7 years. So the El Nino or El Nino plus Southern Oscillation and La Nina, they occur every 2 to 7 years, and it changes the temperature by about 0.2 degrees Celsius. So that may be related with the short period bed thickness, or the bed thicknesses that range from 2 to 7 years across these 4 units. And there's a solar cycle that has a periodicity of about 11 years, and that may be related with the longer period or the larger periodic bed thicknesses we observe for Unit 2 and Unit 3. However, we have only limited measurements of bed thicknesses that we could transform, or that we could use for a power spectral analysis, and that's why we cannot interpret about much larger duration or longer period climate cycles and link them with these periodic bed thicknesses. So we need more bed thickness measurements to identify such long period signals that may have links with decadal to centurial to millennial climate cycles. And the second thing that we did was, or the last thing that we did was to compute a unit-wise average bed thickness. So in this case, we are exploiting we are using the depth domain or the distance domain power spectral analysis. So we resample the HU profiles in each of the units to a constant depth interval, and then we apply the power spectral analysis. So the figures on the left and the right hand here show the results for the 2 boreholes, VC2 and VC16. So in the left hand, we see the resampled and detrended HU profiles for each of the units in VC2 and VC16. And on the right hand side, we can see the power spectral density curve in blue. And also in red, we have a histogram of the hand-picked or the manually picked bed thicknesses that we employed for our earlier analysis. So as you can see, the peaks of the power spectral density, they closely match with what we picked manually for most of the units. For example, for Unit 2 in VC2, and for Unit 1 in BC16. However, there are some mismatches. Those may be related to the lower or the shorter shorter data we have. Like in this case, for Unit 2 for BC16, we have only about 1.5 meters depth to compute the power spectral density. But in this case, we have about 8 or 9 meters depth variation of HU to compute the power spectral density. And if you look at unit 4b, it is a heavily deformed sequence. So the power spectral density that we computed from the HU values may not match with the bed thicknesses that we picked manually. And we can, like theoretically, we could use these bed thickness estimates from the power spectral density, the average bed thickness estimates, to compute a time sequence or the length of time each of these units represent. But we have to be cautious with this because we do not know if any material has been removed during the deposition or if the material has been eroded. Yeah, so those are the two. Those are the things that we have done so far, and this is a summary of our work up to now. And we identify bed thicknesses that repeat every 2 to 7 years and 12 to 15 years, and they may be related or they may have links with El Nino or La Nina and the solar cycle. And we can use power spectral analysis of Hounsfield unit profiles extracted from CT scan images in two approaches or in two ways. Firstly, to understand about the paleoclimatic conditions by manually picking the bed thicknesses, and also to estimate relative age for the borehole core. Yeah, that's it from me, and thank you very much.